And we're live.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to episode 11 of the Leadership Zoomcast. Good to be here. Neil, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm fantastic. Thanks, mate. I'm great. Can't believe it's been a week. A week's flown by since we did the last one.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on the balcony in France at the moment. But what I think's amusing actually is, and we're not using backgrounds today because trying to get the backgrounds working with the different scenery doesn't seem to work too well. So we thought we'd try it without backgrounds.
Yeah.
But what I find amusing is, I bet Tim Ferriss or Tony Robbins doesn't have these issues when they're doing their podcast. Is both Albert and I have just had to sort out our dogs so that they don't come in the room and start barking while we're doing the recording.
Neil's good lady has taken the dogs out for a walk to get them out of the way.
Yeah.
Mine is about to throw one because my son's due around any minute and she goes crazy when he arrives. So, I mean, we've just spent, a good 20 minutes getting set up for that. Right?
Getting set up, yeah. I bet the pros don't have to do that.
Meanwhile, Neil's looking very relaxed in a polo shirt. I'm about to go out the door, so I'm all dressed up, looking a little bit cute. So
yeah. I haven't seen, I don't think I've had a shirt on for 4 or 5ve months now.
Well, if you'd have got me 40 minutes earlier, it was shorts and nothing else, and I don't think we're ready.
Are you going somewhere nice? You heading out somewhere nice?
Yeah, we're just going to go. We just got to head downtown. Sharma's got some things she wants to look into. This year is going to be our 30th wedding anniversary, so she's starting.
Congratulations!
And that stuff. Well, look, we'd have had a party, but obviously COVID's blown that out.
Yeah.
It'll be a 31st party anyway. So and it works better anyway, mate, because you're out there and you wouldn't have been able to be here, and that's not good. So
yeah, we'd have just changed our plans though. We'd have made sure we were there. 30 years though, that's incredible. Most people don't get, that far for sure. Not on their first marriage, and by the time they get to 30 years on their second marriage, they're in their 90s anyway. Anyway, I've had a really full-on day. I've done 6 leadership coaching sessions today, which have been great. But one of the things that was really interesting, I was coaching someone today, and they quoted back to me one of they'd been listening to our Zoomcast and our podcast, and they quoted back the importance of communication in leadership and what they'd learned from that, and that they were trying to practice that. And that was really good to know that we're getting some feedback.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, actually. In fact, it's interesting because I was looking at how we're doing on our feedback and we get any comments back. And this week was really good because this week I ended having a personal messaging with somebody who's actually just starting out on their PhD journey. And she'd been watching, I won't mention her name because she probably wouldn't appreciate that, but she can tell us in the comments later if she wanted to. And she had been looking at our stuff on YouTube and was really interested in whether we could have a conversation later on to help feed into what she's doing there. She's got someone set up for her next conversation, but she wants to see if we can be part of that research. So, Neil, if we're making a difference of that nature, that's fantastic, right?
Exactly. And I think, the whole, searching for leadership clues last week we talked about Jurgen Klopp, and this week we're going to try and search for leadership clues, which actually is not hard to search for because they're really clearly written out. But we're going to discuss the leadership clues in a book that I read probably 18 months ago, and I love the book, and I gift the book a lot to leaders that I coach and mentor. It's a book called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. So Jocko Willink was a Navy SEAL commander and managed a big Navy SEAL team. Learned a lot when he was in Iraq about leadership and obviously other things that he did in the SEALs, and then put it together in a book called Extreme Ownership. And it's a good read, but there's some really good lessons in there around leadership. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yep.
I don't know, you've done a bit of research into it. What are your initial thoughts on it?
Yeah, I did a little bit of research. I mean, look, obviously I was triggered into it by your suggestion, and so I haven't read the whole book cover to cover, but I have looked at some synopsis and some explanations of it, and it looks fantastic. So, what's my thoughts of it? I think there's some great lessons in there that, again, when we've talked with Ian a little while ago, Ian Chappell on here, when we talked with Jean, when we talked with Vivian, we're looking at different walks of life. This is a whole different walk of life. Gosh, and the US Navy SEAL is a bit different from the life that we're used. Well, not for you. It's probably similar to life. But the lessons that he brings out and some of the basic principles, really good stuff for us to talk through here and to share with the audience. Really
so let's dive straight in, right? Because the title of the book kind of gives away one of the first key lessons that he learned, and then there's lots in there. We're going to explore maybe 4 or 5 of them in the time we've got.
Yeah.
But the book's called Extreme Ownership, and in Jocko's TED Talk, which I'll put a link to in the notes at the bottom, he tells a story about an operation in Iraq that didn't go well, and he was summoned to the command, to the generals, the colonels, whoever, to talk through what hadn't gone well. And they wanted to know who was at fault and who was to blame. Yeah. And he spent a long time thinking about it. And he stood in front of them and he said, and they said, "Who's to blame for this not happening?" He said, "I am." "Who's to blame for this not happening?" He said, "I am." "Who's to blame for this not happening?" He said, "I am." He said, "I'm the leader of the team. I'm responsible." And he calls it extreme ownership. It's about owning what your team do, being responsible for what your team do, good or bad. As the leader, you're the one who makes the decisions. You're the one who chooses the team. You're the one who trains it. So it's all about you. And I thought, what a great message. How many leaders could do with understanding that? I don't know. What do you think when you saw that?
Look, we've seen that as well, right? In the things we've been through, we've seen where leaders would stand up and say, "Yeah, that was me." You'd see them stand up and say it was me when they didn't believe it was them and it was obvious. Or you've seen them where they genuinely took it on board. So I think as a principle and as a message, it's absolutely right. And I think the key thing about that for me is acknowledging the fact that we all make mistakes, right? But if you own the overall mission for what the team is out to deliver, then why wouldn't you take accountability for the fact that it didn't succeed? And be open about that, right?
Yeah.
I think until you're open about it, you're not going to address what actually caused it to go wrong. If you want to start pointing fingers around the table, well, you're not going to be pointing in the right place, which is going to examine what happened, right?
Actually, pointing fingers is a really interesting one, because what do they say when you're pointing a finger, there's 3 fingers pointing at you?
Exactly right.
Exactly right. I love this whole concept, because it's difficult to do that as a leader, you know, and I see it in small businesses I work with, large corporates I work with, is when something doesn't go right, there's a blame feeling comes out, you know. They didn't do this right. What, you know, the salesman made the wrong decision. The salesman made the wrong call. The salesman, or you know, the delivery person made the wrong decision, or wasn't there soon enough, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So they explain away the problem by looking at fault within the team.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you what was really good in the Jocko story is, I think he said it when he stood up in front of his commanders with a belief that he'd be taken out, with a belief that he would be taken down because he failed. And instead, he got absolute respect from them that said, "Right, you're taking it on board. What's your fix?" And that's the important thing he talks of, right? He says, acknowledge that you've got failures, understand what they are, and work out a plan on how you're going to address what went wrong. Whatever the failures were, it was your failures because you lead the team.
Yeah, and I think that it's not, it's leading the team, it's setting up the team. It's, you know, you built the plan, you hired the people to deliver the plan, you trained the team and got the number of resources you need to deliver the plan. So you know, so all of it is down to the leader to make sure that all of the things are in place. So how can you develop a fix if something doesn't go right? Then I guess, well, what do you think? How can you develop a fix if things don't go right?
Well, first of all, you have to be honest about what went wrong, right? And if you're not going to be honest about that, then you're never going to get to that fix. So if you're open about the fact that something, and I just want to come back to what you said there, right? You're leading the team. What I would say, guys who are listening to this is not about someone just being courageous or being gracious.
Oh yeah,
Yes, it was me. No, you have to believe it. You have to believe it was you, because did you hire the wrong people? Or did you not train the people properly? Or did you not give them the right tools to do the job? If it didn't happen, it's probably because you didn't make the decisions. Look, it can go the other way. It could be a huge success. Who gets the glory, right? So you share that glory with your team, and you shouldn't take it all yourself. You share it with your team. I think Jocko says, if it goes well, I give them all the glory and say it wasn't me. But come on, you have to be fair. Personal view, you have to be fair in that. But you have to share with the fact your team executed it. You didn't do it all.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. This is not just about somebody trying to sound good. It's about honestly believing it. And you need to believe.
And it isn't easy. And I'd have to say I've been guilty of blaming people in my team when things haven't gone right. I've been guilty.
No. Really?
Or blaming my boss, of course. That would be the other thing as well. Because he didn't give me the right resources. He didn't give me the right people. He didn't. But actually, that's an interesting point there, right? So, is it your boss's fault that he didn't give you, or didn't you make a good enough case to get them? You know, did you not make a good enough case? Did you not explain to him why it was important enough? Because I don't believe your boss came to work to do a bad job today.
Yeah. Now that's a good point as well, Neil, because he makes that. He talks about that in the book as well. What he says is, if you're going to talk to your boss, are you communicating up and you communicating down?
Yeah.
Communicating up, you're asking for things, possibly. If you're asking for things, you have to present a good case. Because, by the way, your colleagues are presenting good cases as well, right? And your boss only has so much resource or so much time or so much energy, and they're going to direct it to where they think they're going to get the best return. So present a good case and tell them what the impact is going to be if they meet your requests. You've got to be honest with you. Put your case forward. Why shouldn't you?
Yeah, and managing up. I mean, I've had a number of conversations today in the coaching I've been doing about the importance of managing up. You know, your boss is not a mind reader. You know, so don't expect them to be. And I had a comment from someone. It actually wasn't today. It was another day where they said, during COVID, my boss hasn't phoned me for 3 months. And I thought, okay, that's not great leadership. Fair enough.
No.
I said, how many times have you tried ringing him? Oh, no, I was waiting for him to phone me. And I just thought, come on, you've got to take some ownership, some responsibility. Managing up is just as important as managing down. I think that kind of leads nicely onto the second point. So the first thing is all about extreme ownership. It kind of says it in the title, own it as the leader. But the second thing I really love this I think it's the second chapter or the second point that comes across is there's no such thing as bad teams, only bad leaders. And I thought, wow, that's a great statement. Did you pick that out in the?
So let's just look at that, right? What if in the team there are people who are not up to the job, right? That's a bad team, right?
Or is it? Or as we've just said, did you recruit the team in the wrong way?
Now that's exactly that we want people to think about it here, guys, because you might put that through in your own thinking, guys. You might be, but there's guys in the team that are not up to it. So whose job is it to address that?
Yeah. So are they not up to it because they haven't got the skills? Well, therefore you need to train them. Are they not up to it because they haven't got the motivation? Well, who owns getting them motivated? Are they not up to it because they haven't got the capability? Then fair enough. Maybe they're in the wrong role and you need to move them into a role where their skills and capability could be better used. The person who owns that is the leader. But also, I suppose a rhetorical question in another way would be, so as a leader, I expect my team to work from 8 in the morning till 7 at night. And when I get in at 9 and I go home at 5, I expect them to be there.
Yeah, because I'm the boss.
Because I'm the boss. So the second point around there's no such thing as bad teams, only bad leaders. You set the standards.
Yeah.
If you are coming in at 9 and going home at 5, I'm not saying hours of work is a good measure, by the way, because I don't believe in the more hours you work, the better you are. But if your standards as a leader are not high enough and you're not setting high standards, then how can you expect your team to set high standards?
Yeah. I think the other thing that you see him talk about is, okay, so let it drop to a different standard, because that becomes the new norm now. That becomes the new standard, right? So you make sure you're keeping that bar raised all the time. And I remember when you and I worked together, Neil, we all said, right, if we're not lifting the bar, we're going backwards because everybody else is moving ahead, right? So you've got to keep lifting that bar.
And that presents an interesting management challenge as well, because every time you lift the bar, because you've got to raise your standards and therefore you need your team to raise their standards.
Yeah.
Some people will feel uncomfortable with going up to that level, that doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means that maybe that's just a bit high for them now. So then you need to manage that expectation and bring people in who are able to cope with the new standard and enable other people to go and find things to do somewhere else if they're not able to.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, just because somebody can't achieve that standard immediately,
Oh, that's a good point.
Personally, I wouldn't give up on them just yet, right?
Yeah.
It just means they're not ready for that maybe, right? So is that education? Is that training? Is that coaching? Is that shadowing? I mean, gosh, there's a lot of value in letting someone shadow you and see what you do and how they could learn from that.
Yeah.
So don't write somebody off because at a point in time, they can't achieve something you think they should do.
Right? No, and I think the other thing that comes out in this particular chapter around this, there's no such thing as bad teams, only bad leaders, is about accountability. It's about hold your team accountable for what you want them to do.
Yeah.
But the first thing is they've got to know what you want them to do.
Yeah.
So you've got to be clear on, right, this is your role in the team. This is what good looks like for you. And then hold them accountable to delivering on what good looks like.
Yeah. I think, so that's another point that gets referenced, right, is are you clear yourself on the mission? And if you're not, you've got to get clear on that mission. Sorry, I think I've jumped ahead, Neil, because I know it's one of the sections we wanted to go to, right?
No, let's go to it. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to be clear on that mission. And if you're not, get clear before you take it to your team. Because if
it's getting clear, so there's two things. There's getting clear on it. So be really clear on what is your echelon above, is what they call it in the military. What's your layer up? What are they asking you to do? So the first thing is be really clear on that, because if you're not clear, you can't articulate that down to your team.
Yeah.
The second thing is you've got to believe it. If you don't believe in the mission, then what Jocko says in his book, and I think is a really good point, is if you don't believe in the mission, then ask the questions, do the things you need to do to get comfortable with the mission.
Yeah.
You don't accept it until you believe in it, and make sure you understand, because your boss isn't doing it because they're stupid. Maybe they just don't understand something that you do.
Yeah.
So spend some time with your echelon aboves, working out how you can believe in the mission. And it might be changing it slightly, but I think those are the two things. One of them is understand it. The second one is believe in it.
I'd say option 3, don't blag it, guys. Don't blag it. Don't blag it, right? If you honestly don't understand it or honestly don't believe in it, do the work to get to where you need to get to, because it will be obvious to your team, and your behavior won't be right. Your commitment won't be right. What did we say? If you don't set the right standard, they'll all come in at the same level. It will be there, right? It will be, because you're going to get into tough times. And in those tough times, that's not the time to question whether we should have gone into this mission or not, right? That should have been done at the start before you headed off. Right?
Yeah, and if you don't believe it, you can't inspire people to deliver on it. You can't ask them to deliver on it. So, so that brings us really nicely back to the point on there's no such thing as bad teams, only bad leaders. And one of the things Jocko talks about in his book, which I absolutely love, is don't allow any infighting in your team. It doesn't matter. And we've all seen it. We've all seen people in the team bitching about another team member because he's not pulling his weight, or I do more than him, or he's not doing as many sales calls as me. You've got to, as a leader, you've got to suppress that infighting and stop that. I mean, how have you dealt with that in the past?
Yeah, it's a good point, actually, because as you say, we have all seen it, right? And it's normally in times of crisis, right? It's in times of crisis when people are looking for someone to blame. Mm-hmm. I think I've got 2 angles on that. One of them is with the actual person that might raise the issue. I think I'd rather have a one-to-one with that person to understand what you're thinking, what's triggered you to act that way or say those words or behave that way, because it could be toxic for the team. Having had that conversation and got beyond that, I think you need to put it in front of the team. I think you need to say, look, we've got potentially an issue here. in the chemistry of the team, guys, let's talk it out, let's work it out, but let's not hide it. So I think
Actually,
that's coming.
And how's that gone in the past when you've had to do that? And because that's a difficult conversation to have, to get almost banging children's heads together.
Yeah.
We've got a problem. We've got some chemistry that's not working in the team.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
I think I've had examples where it's worked, where everybody's gone, yeah, you're right, blah, 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 and we fixed it, right? But I think it's also been, maybe you've got to come back round, because maybe it's not going to happen now, right? Energies are at a high level, tempers might be at a high level, maybe you've got to walk away from this. I mean, it could be as much as walking away as having a coffee break, but it could be as much as walking away of coming back a different day, right?
But I think you're right, though. In my experience of having to facilitate it in teams, so I haven't experienced it really in a team that I was leading, but when I've had to facilitate it in teams, what I've found works really well, and actually Jocko does talk about this, is that common purpose, common enemy. If you can find that focus that everyone is energized around, it kind of stops the infighting, because the infighting doesn't help. It doesn't move things forward. It doesn't, and I've been guilty of, I wasn't the best team player in the world as a sales leader. Our sales is doing fine. It's delivery's problem, or it's always offering's problem because they're never delivering enough for sales to sell. But but that doesn't help. It doesn't help, because if you haven't got delivering, or the products aren't coming out of the factory in the right way, then sales can't succeed. If sales aren't selling, then stuff's coming out of the factory, and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I'll tell you what you just triggered in my head, Neil, when you said about get back to what the objective is or what the goal is you and I know that people will head in a direction that you face them or that you're focused on. And it's right. Bring the focus back to, where are we trying to get to? Don't bring the focus back to, I think you and I have also said before, right? If you give something time and focus, it gives it energy. If you give it energy, you let it grow, right?
Right, yeah.
If you've got a situation that might be going toxic, starve it. You've got to deal with it, but then starve it. Don't spend too much time on it.
And actually, we talked about this and kind of having difficult conversations and stuff. It is a bit like toxic's a good word, or an illness. It expands and spread if it's not dealt with quickly.
Yeah.
So the infighting, leaders have got to deal with it quickly, like we talked about a few minutes ago, which is around standards. Set the standards and values, and one of the standards is we support each other. If there's a problem, let's get in a room and let's punch it out in the room if we have to.
Yeah.
But let's make sure we get it done, get it moved on, and we're focused on the objective.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, by the way, just one more on that, right? I can't remember whether it's in Jocko's words or not, but something that I have seen recently, it may have been with Jocko's, is about also be careful that the team are not looking at another department and blaming another department. It might not even be under your control, but it might be, well, look, it's not us in this area, it's those guys over there, and now we're going to have a bleat about those guys over there, right? Only handle what's in your view of influence and control. Right?
Yeah.
You can't fix that, right?
And we've kind of we have touched on that in previous Zoomcasts, which is we always moan about things that are outside of our control, because if it was in our control, we wouldn't be moaning about it.
Yeah, we'd be doing something about it. You're absolutely right. Right.
Yeah. So let's move on to one of the other points in the book, which is about, he calls it checking your ego, which I really like that as a concept, because if the leader has an ego and they think it's all about them, they're kind of missing the point, because it isn't about them. It's not about how great they feel, or it's about enabling the team to succeed. And what did you pick up from that kind of thing around checking the ego?
I think we talked about it up front earlier on, but one of the things it's got is about admitting that you've made a mistake or you make mistakes, right? That's where that ego thing needs to be addressed. The reason we might find ourselves in a problem might be because of something you did, said, or didn't do or say, right? Take that on board. So you make mistakes, so what?
Yeah.
The thing is, acknowledge that and have a plan. And I think that's the big thing.
And actually, he talks about this in this section, which is, and don't feel bad about asking for help. So don't feel bad about saying, do you know what? I'm not sure how to deal with this situation. Can you help me? I need some input. I need some advice. Yeah, you still got to make a decision as a lead. Someone's got to make the decision, but don't feel like you can't ask for help, you can't ask for input, and then that's going to weaken your position.
How good your team going to feel if you say, come on, guys, we're in this together. Let's think of a solution. Let's work on it. I mean, they're not sitting there waiting for the next direction from you, right? Now, I know in the world he comes from, it is very much about they receive orders and they do what they're told. But I think they're asked to think as well, right?
Well, especially in special forces, you're definitely asked to think. You're asked to challenge the mission. You know, you're not just I'm telling you to charge at this hill, so don't question me. Just go do it.
Exactly.
So they are trained to do that, and it is really important that as the leader, your ego doesn't stop you from being a bit more vulnerable. I use the word vulnerable because I was watching something on TV the other day about vulnerability in leadership, which I do want to talk about in a podcast, but maybe not now, in a Zoom cast, but maybe not now. But so I think you don't feel scared about letting that ego down a little bit and allowing people to. So I thought that was a really good point.
Yeah, I think, wasn't that one of Jean's key points, Jean McCaskill, when she spoke to us, as we were saying, so it just shows, right, this goes right across the board.
It all connects, right? And surprise, surprise, right? You know, leadership's leadership. And as we're searching for clues, some of the same clues keep popping up. But so the final thing, I think, to just kind of bring this to a close, because there are so many great things in the book, and we've touched on some of the major topics, is there's a great story in there where he talks about being in a firefight.
Yep.
And they're in a firefight. They're right in the midst of it. You know, there's bullets flying overhead. There's explosions going off. And he said, it's really important that the leader, although you're in it, takes a step back. Even if you just move back a meter and you just got a chance to just look at the bigger picture to see what's going on. Because when you're in it, you can't make the decisions that are needed for the team so that you can win the battle or you can move forward towards the objective.
Yeah,
I thought that was a really good example.
Yeah, and I think when he talked about it up front, he was saying as he was coming through the ranks. And I remember one of the examples he talked of is he also had to make that call when he wasn't the leader. He was one of the guys that were there, and he looked around him and said, hey, what's going on? Interesting when he described it, by the way. He was talking in seconds and minutes, right? When he described it, I thought he was talking about having a quarterly review. Seconds and minutes, this thing's happening, right? And he said he stood back, and the leader was in with the rest of the guys, but he stood back and went, whoa, hang on. And he made the call, right? And everybody went with him. You don't have to be the guy wearing the stripes.
But that's interesting, because that does show good leadership from his leader at the time that said, okay, this guy can see something I can't see. Let's trust him.
Yeah.
I had a real example, actually. When I very first joined the army, I was doing a night navigation competition, and we were having to navigate around, in fact, not far from where you live, actually, just out near Farnham.
Uh-huh.
And it was, so it was a night navigation. Anyway, the team I was in, the officer in charge of it wasn't a great map reader. And we were all over the place. And I said, look, do you mind if I take command of the map and the compass? I'll get us to all the points we need to get to. And he dropped his ego and he said, yeah, okay, you take over. And we did reasonably well, not brilliantly, but we did reasonably well. And we got back to the tent and he said, well done for stepping forward. You know, I was one of the most junior people there, but I knew how to map read. I was a good map reader. So he said, if you've got a skill and you know, and it's better than my skill, step forward.
Did you feel any fear at the time that you might have made a mistake here? You might be leading them into something, and then, or what drove you to?
So that's actually, you don't realize how good a question that is, actually, because one of the things that is frightening when you are leading people outside in the dark and you're map reading is you are always questioning, even though I'm confident I'm doing the right thing. I'm confident this. It's really nerve-wracking because you don't want to let people down. You don't want to, because it's not about being a fool of yourself, because no one's going to care about that, but it's about letting people down. So you've got this group of people behind you and they're trusting you to go in the right direction and do the right thing. And actually it's a scary thing. It's quite a scary thing. It does get the adrenaline pumping.
Yeah.
But there's a phrase I always remember whenever you do anything to do with map reading, but it's a good analogy for life as well. So if you're trying to navigate towards a goal or a point on a navigation exercise, quite often doubt comes in just before you're going to get to that point. And so your doubt comes in, you get the map out, you start thinking, oh, maybe we've gone past this track, or but actually, if you just push on a little bit further, you get to your goal. And I think that's a great analogy for life as well. You know, sometimes you struggle, you think, you know what, I'm going to give up because this isn't working. But if you just go a little bit further, there it is.
You know what? You've actually just hit on one of Tony Robbins' phrases, which is, you don't know how close to success you were when you gave up. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly it. Right. I pushed. Is that enough? And it's just that little bit extra.
But so we got off a bit of a tangent on that, but I think it's an important story. But the point of stepping back, because and I see this lots when leaders are in being player managers. If they're in being player managers, who's stepping back and looking at what the other team's doing?
Yeah.
Who's stepping back and taking the time to look at, you know, what their attack's doing, what their defense is doing? And if the manager is also a player, then there's no one who's got that big picture. So it is really important to step back every now and then.
I think just to put it in perspective for the audience here, guys, that isn't an in the moment, we're in a battle situation. That could be minutes, that could be hours, that could be days, that could be on a quarterly basis. Just stop, stand back, take a look, and decide whether you need to be doing something different from what you've been doing. There's nothing the matter with that at all. There's nothing the matter with turning up on Monday morning and saying, guys, I think we've got to change the plan. Yeah.
Because of these reasons, not because I woke up feeling like it, but I've got some evidence that supports it. So look, we've covered most of the key points from the book, I think. And, you know, I would highly recommend reading it. I'll put a link to the Amazon page in the details below. Any final thoughts from you on this particular topic?
Yeah, no, look, great book. And when you first suggested this was something we needed to have a look at and see whether we could do a Zoomcast on it, I thought, I don't know, let's have a read. Do you know, and the more you read, the more you went, wow, this is just perfect. So no, really good. I think we've done it justice, Neil. I don't think we can, cover the whole book, but I think we've done it justice in pulling out some points.
Yeah.
If people are taken away from learning points from here, great. But I'm with you. I'd recommend they could read that book if they get the chance, because there's a lot to learn in there. And hopefully it's been good at covering some items for us.
Yeah, and the TED Talk's great as well, which I'll put a link to. I've really enjoyed talking about this, actually, because it covers so many broad topics as well. So don't know what we're going to do next week. We'll see what takes a fancy as we move into the week. Yeah. Any closing comments you want to make?
No, I'm going to go back outdoors to 36 degrees in the UK. You're in France. I don't know what you've got out there, man.
About the same, yeah.
It's absolutely crazy out there, but it was really good to spend the time talking around this.
Yeah.
Guys, keep giving us your comments, keep giving us your feedback, and thank you for participating with us here. It's really good, So the more we can add for you, let us know if there's anything specific you want. But if not, no, Neil, over to you to close.
Thanks, Albert. And as Albert says, please leave your comments. We love reading them. I've just read one before we came on today from a leadership coach who just said he loved the Jurgen Klopp discussion, and he teaches leadership. And he said you covered all the key points that I teach in leadership. So it was great feedback. So we love the feedback. Please subscribe. Click on the thumbs up button. And keep your eyes open for exciting news around the leadership detectives, which I think we'll probably work on over the next month or so as well. Anyway, have a great week, everyone, and happy leading.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye. Bye.